Plato's allegory of the cave is arguably the most famous philosophical story ever produced. It comes around at the beginning of Book 7 of arguably the most famous philosophical work ever produced, The Republic. Despite its recognition, many people just have a vague idea of what it's all about and haven't read through it themselves. In this video, we're going to go through the actual text of Plato's allegory of the cave and explore two popular interpretations that are sure to help you write that philosophy paper coming up. Just don't tell them you got it from some weird blue YouTuber. Firstly, this may be obvious to some, but just in case, an allegory is a narrative or other work that holds a secret meaning within. For example, the story of the boy who cried wolf could be taken literally, like don't say there's a wolf when there isn't really one, but it's really an allegory for not lying in general. Thankfully for us, Plato tells us what the secret meaning behind the allegory of the cave is in the beginning of Book 7. Next then, compare the effect of education and that of the lack of it on our nature to an experience like this. So as we go through the story, I want you to keep education in the back of your mind for now. Not just any type of education, but we'll get to that later. Plato starts by asking us to imagine, unsurprisingly, a cave. And in this cave exists humans who have lived there ever since they've been born. They've been chained up so that they could only see a wall, and that wall is all they've been able to see for their entire lives. But behind them, and unbeknownst to them, is a fire that shines a light on the wall that they're looking at. And also behind them are people who carry statues between the prisoners and the fire, so that shadows appear in front of the prisoners. Also imagine then that there are people alongside the wall carrying multifarious artifacts that project above it statues of people and other animals, made of stone, wood, and every material. Due to the fire's light, these artifacts produce shadows for the prisoners. So all these prisoners could see for their entire lives are these shadows of different statues. Now, if you grew up in the cave and had no knowledge of the outside world or anything but the shadows, what would those shadows mean to you? All in all then, what the prisoners would take for true reality is nothing other than the shadows of those artifacts. The shadows of the statues that represent real things are all they really know. That is their life. But what if one of the prisoners escaped and left the cave? Well, the first thing that would happen would probably be a lot of pain. After all, you're coming from a life growing up in the dark cave to this new shining light coming from the sun. It wouldn't be surprising if someone was so hurt by that intense light that they wanted to run back into the cave. But if that prisoner pushed through, he would need some time to get adjusted. After all, he could see all these great new things, all these real entities behind the shadows. Instead of seeing a shadow of a cat, for instance, now he would see the cat and be amazed that this was the true reality behind it all. And after witnessing all these new things in the outside world, he would finally see the sun and recognize its importance. He would already be able to conclude about it that it provides the seasons and the years, governs everything in the visible world, and is in some way the cause of all the things that he and his fellows used to see. So if you're paying attention, Plato has kinda set up a hierarchy of sources. The lowest form of reality was the shadows, as they were only representations of the real things. Above that, we actually have those real things, like people, trees, animals, that sort of thing. And highest above all is the sun, which is the cause of all of this. So now that we have a large part of the story covered, let's go over what the secret meaning is behind all of this. Let's start with the prisoners. Those prisoners stuck in the cave looking at shadows and believing that to be true reality? Well, I got bad news for you. That's us. To Plato, we're like those prisoners seeing things with our eyes and senses and believing that that's that. To understand why, we need to talk about Plato's theory of forms, as it's the most respected interpretation of the allegory of the cave. You're alive in this world right now. At least I hope you are. Look around you right now. Visually identify something like a pencil or a coffee cup. You may say, yep, that's a pencil, and leave it at that. But there's so many variations on pencils. I mean, you got mechanical, wooden, those bougie Blackwing pencils, and then these pencils change depending on how you use them. But what is the pencil? Whatever the true pencil is, it must be unchanging, perfect, and absolute. Or as Plato would call it, it would be the form of pencil. Throughout this world, when we see things, we're only seeing phenomena of the true form of that thing. For example, we see many trees in our lives, but for Plato, these are all just phenomena subject to change and variation, whereas the ultimate, unchanging tree would be the form of tree. One way to think about the theory of forms is to think of a blueprint for a product, and the multiple products that come about as a result of that blueprint. The blueprint is perfect, with precise measurements and everything, whereas each product created from the blueprint will have tiny microscopic variations here and there. Go to Walmart and look at a standard coffee mug. There was a perfect, unchanging blueprint for this mug, describing size and whatnot. But take a closer look at each of those coffee mugs and you'll find something that makes them different. Maybe one has a chip, maybe a black spot, maybe a little dust. So it is with the world of forms and the world of phenomenon. The world of forms, like the blueprint, contain the one true, unchanging, perfect source, and the phenomenon are the imperfect, changing products of that perfect, unchanging source. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but understanding Plato's theory of forms is crucial for not only understanding this allegory, not only this book, but the entirety of Plato's work. So we're the prisoners, believing these phenomena or shadows to be the true reality. But through education and philosophizing, we can discover these forms or these true unchanging sources behind the phenomenon. Therefore, the allegory of the cave is not about education in general. It's about a specific education, an education that leads to the discovery of the forms. Now that's the most well-accepted interpretation of the allegory of the cave. However, some see it also as a more general allegory for learning philosophy. Let's say you disagree with Plato and his theory of forms, but find yourself more in line with another philosophy, a philosophy that's able to change the way you look at almost everything. If that's the case, then the allegory of the cave can be a call to learn philosophy in general. Not to discover the forms, but to discover other theories and thoughts that change how you look at things from now on. If your professor is strict, it'd be best to just talk about how the allegory of the cave is all about Plato's theory of forms. But if your professor is more open-minded, then I'd say mention both the theory of forms and your own philosophical interpretation. Because maybe the reason why Plato's cave hasn't been very specifically interpreted is because it could apply to so many situations. I felt like I was the prisoner in the cave before I tried the Popeyes chicken sandwich, and now I have become enlightened. Have fun with it, come up with your own creative interpretations and comment them below. Just don't forget that Plato is most likely talking about his theory of forms with this allegory. Although I'm sure he'd feel the same way if he tried the Popeyes chicken sandwich. Well, hopefully this video helped you not only understand Plato's allegory of the cave, but also the theory of forms that is so crucial to almost all of Plato. Go read it yourself. I'd highly recommend the CDC Reeve translation of the Republic. If you found this video helpful, then like, subscribe, and share this video for other philosophy-minded individuals. And with that, I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.